get started. Good morning. I am Dr. Brenda Willer-Bies, and today I'm going to be speaking to you about bassoon, American culture, and the music of Libby Larsen. So today we'll talk about Libby Larsen's 3 works that feature bassoon and the cultural conversation that Larsen has with the performer and audience through these pieces. Finding cultural connection in Libby Larsen's work is not difficult, since Libby Larsen herself says they are present in her work. Researcher Jennifer Kelly quotes Larsen as saying, "I consciously build into my pieces, subtly if I can, sometimes not so subtly, cultural references." So let's take a look at how Larsen has built references about American culture into these works. American composer Libby Larsen was born in 1950. She has a tremendous compositional output of over 500 works in a wide variety of genres, including opera, orchestra, choir, wind ensemble, and chamber ensembles. Her talents have been recognized by a number of accolades, including the Peabody Award, Lifetime Achievement Award, and the American Academy of Arts and Letters. Also the McKnight Distinguished Artist Award in 2016. She co-founded the American Composers Forum, and she's also served as a chair at the Library of Congress.
Wow.
One aspect of Larsen's musical language that has often been written about that is particularly relevant to today's discussion is her use of American vernacular. Vernacular refers to the use of the ordinary rather than formal speech of a particular time. In this case, American vernacular refers to her use of elements from American popular music and the English language. The 3 works I'm discussing today are Jazz Variations from 1977, Concert Piece for Bassoon and Piano from 2008, and Full Moon in the City from 2013, which is for string, orchestra, and bassoon. When I interviewed Libby Larsen in November of 2016 and asked her about composing for bassoon, she referred to the bassoon as a cultural vehicle. And that idea can be seen in all 3 of these works. In the program notes to Concert Piece, she writes that she casts the bassoon in the role of a minstrel poet, a Broadway bard, if you will, who has gathered us for a tell about our culture's expressiveness. Of course, the R here refers to our American culture, and these works are filled with references to American culture in the form of quotation, the influence of popular music, and the use of American English, both as instructions and as an influence to Libby Larsen's rhythmical language. The first thing that drew me to these works is Libby Larsen's use of musical quotation in the second movement of Full Moon in the City. Larsen's use of bassoon in connection with American culture is clear in this movement through her use of quotation of many popular songs. The way she uses these quotations also references the popular music genre of mashups. If you aren't familiar with this genre, it's a musical form where the artist takes clips of other songs and performances and layers them on top of each other to create a new work. Often these can be found on YouTube, and in the YouTube video descriptions, there's often a list of the songs that the composer has used. In a similar manner, Larsen gives us a list of these pieces in her program notes. Some of the quotations are easy to hear, whereas others are very small and obscure references. The chart here shows where each of these pieces are used. Just to clarify, she gives the song title and composer in her notes. The measure numbers are my own research. So just taking a brief look at that, you can see how they're kind of layered on top of each other. You might also notice a moon theme to the songs that are used. So the effect that Larsen seeks in this is that of walking by nightclubs late at night. And so let's see if we can listen to a short clip of this. This is where my lack of MacBook skills is gonna be problematic. It's gonna pull, nope. I really wish, there it is. And it's gonna play.
Hi, I'm Nicole Buckley from Santa Fe Promise. I know this is hard to hear, but it's important. The shooter who
Yeah.
Love those.
So we'll have to skip that. So I suggest that you go listen to this piece. It's easily available online. It was called up, but it's giving me problems. So you would hear just little bits and fragments of everything on top of each other. So let's move on. Maybe. There we go. It's hard to talk about Larsen's works without talking about her use of conversation and the way she composes her music. Through the way she composes her music, she seems to seek to have a conversation with performer and audience. Larsen's works are primarily written on commission, and in an older version of her website, she stated that, plain and simple, I compose on commission because I require the entire process of commission, creating, performing, and communicating. This idea of communicating and having conversation with performer and audience extends into these works for bassoon, works that ask us to consider aspects of American culture and the influence of other genres. One way that Larsen creates this conversation is through her use of American English instructions, and sometimes instructions that are a little ambiguous and make the performer think. So in Full Moon in the City, in the third movement is titled At 5 a.m., there's these ambiguous instructions of treat each note as a wave lapping the shore and as steady and calm as moonlight. Larsen seems more interested in creating a dialogue with the performer by giving them something to respond to and think about, rather than an exact direction to execute. Of these directions, she told me that they're indications to muse upon. Some of her titles and performance instructions also have a deeper meaning in reference to culture for us to consider and ponder and to discuss. In Concert Piece, the third movement's title and instructions to play flat out reference more than just a fast tempo. In my phone interview with Larsen in November of 2016, she stated that it's also a cultural reference to an American trait seen through the eyes of other cultures, that we are always speeding ahead without thinking of the consequences. Her use of American English, besides the use of American English in the later two works for bassoon, American English has also had a great influence on Larsen's musical language. Larsen has stated that she views English as a rhythmic language. And she writes, our own American language has beautiful rhythms in it. It is this American vernacular and the rhythm of our American life that is the language of my music. Her use of rhythm based in language is evident in the first movement of Concert Piece, where the bassoon acts as that Broadway bard telling us about our culture. Here are two sections in particular that stand out for having this rhythmic language to it. In the quotation above, the bassoon seems to speak in a frantic rhythm with a limited range focused on one pitch. The other example speaks in a very insistent manner. In addition, larger leaps at the end of the passage may reference the sound of an evangelical revivalist preacher, like in Larsen's saxophone piece, Holy Roller. Let me play just a little bit of this rhythm for you so you can get a taste of how that sounds. So you can hear that it's kind of talking and not quite what you expect melodically, maybe. So let's take a look at the influence of other genres on Libby Larsen's musical language and rhythms. So in the first movement of Concert Piece, Larsen uses the terms jazz, rhythm, and balance, dirty boogie, rock, and blue. In this way, she invites the performer to draw on their knowledge of jazz, boogie, rock, and blues for the appropriate interpretation of the music. When I asked when I interviewed her and I asked about these references, Libby Larsen stated the following: "What I was hoping for is that the person playing the piece thinks very hard about how they're going to produce what their interpretation of blue or rock is. What's your interpretation of rock? Not in words, but in sound. So I'm indicating a search for a style beyond classical for that particular moment of the piece, in the way the notes are colored and inflected." Larsen asked the performer to consider and draw on their cultural knowledge, and in this way converse with the audience about these other genres of music. Another way that she shows the influence of rock in this piece is with bends that reference the sound of an electric guitar tremolo bar. So let me play that effect for you. So it's up there. Well, it's not up there. But I'll show you that now. That's the bends there.
Okay.
It's easier to hear than it is to see. So,
Right,
let's take a look at the influence of jazz on her work. So jazz variations should not be thought of as jazz. And instead, this title gives indication of the influence of jazz on this piece. Although this piece was written considerably earlier than the other two pieces, it still displays this connection with the American vernacular and the influence of other American genres of music. Libby Larsen told me that this piece was a reaction to Gunther Schuller's third stream music. And in that 2016 phone interview that I had with Libby Larsen, the composer stated that she saw this music as an appropriation of jazz in order to create an academic profile of jazz and claim ownership of it. In contrast, Larsen seeks to explore the inspiration of jazz through her own voice. She stated, "I really love jazz, but I don't want to write it. I want it to filter through my music." As you listen, notice the syncopations, swing, and glissandi drawn from the influence of jazz. And there's examples that I have up here. You can see some glissandis, and this second example, measure 80, the dotted 8th, 16th note rhythm is actually supposed to be swung. And also, as you listen, you may notice that not only is it not jazz, but it also doesn't fit the traditional idea of variations. It draws influence from a theme and variations, but there is no clear theme and then variations. There are variations marked in the score and changes, but she's actually varying motifs in that music instead of that. And I could have a whole other lecture of how the idea of variations works in this movement, so I won't get into that right now. Instead, I will play you Jazz Variations for Solo Bassoon by Libby Larsen. With that, I'd like to ask if there are any questions.
How many works are we talking about with Libby Larsen for Bassoon? Like not like
She written?
yeah.
Yeah.
For bassoon, featuring the bassoon, just those three pieces that I talked about today. There is bassoon included in a number of chamber works also.
What's the name of the chamber works?
I don't know all of them.
Well,
I
like,
just
is it, like,
discovered some of them.
Quintets, probably?
I'd have to look it up.
Yeah.
I'd have to look it up because I don't remember offhand. But
How did you discover her?
I was looking for something to do for my lecture recital, and I came across that Full Moon in the City piece that had the quotations, and was like, "Well, this is really cool." And so I decided that was my topic. That's I had known about Libby Larsen though from a number of clarinetists that I knew who played a lot of her works, so I was familiar with her work already.
Yeah. And what was her training background?
University of Minnesota, I believe.
Oh.
She has a doctorate from there.
Where does she live now?
Same place, yeah.
What's her main instrument?
Voice.
Oh,
wow.
That makes a lot of sense.
Interesting.
Yeah. I think originally she was going to be a vocal major, but had already done composition and piano, and so changed paths into composition at some point, sometime I think during her undergrad. I don't remember it exactly.
Wow. I have never heard of her.
Well, now you have.
No. I'm very excited to go explore her work now.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really wonderful. There's also a book. This is why I'm like, I don't remember the name of that piece because I just read about a piece that has a bassoon, flute, and voice that she's composed.
Oh, interesting.
And I am not remembering the title of it right now. I'm blanking on the title.
No, I'm gonna do that now. That's
And
awesome.
so there's also a book, Libby Larsen, Composing an American Life, that came out 2017. It's actually really good. I've been reading it. So, yeah. So, I hope that I have inspired you to learn more about Libby Larsen.
Mission accomplished.
Wonderful.
It's nice to hear her work played really immaculately.
Oh,
'Cause I heard like a really old recording of that piece and was like, I'm not so fan. But now I'm like, oh yeah, I like that.
It's a great piece, and actually, of the three, it's my least favorite. So
Wow.
this is a great
Okay.
piece, but I think I actually like the other two pieces.
The other two pieces. Oh, wow.
I think
Check
concert
them
piece
out.
is my favorite. It's very challenging. It's lots of leaps in it and things that are tricky. And I really love Full Moon in the City, but it works a lot better with the string orchestra instead of, or string ensemble. I guess it's maybe not full orchestra, but because she uses lots of string tricks, right? Like harmonics and glissandi that can't be reproduced on the piano effectively. So
Do you know if the string parts are difficult for the strings also? Like, do you know what the,
I don't.
you have to have a great orchestra?
I mean, I know the parts are very challenging for the pianist in both the concert piece especially, because it's really kind of, I mean, it's for bassoon and piano and piano, not just bassoon with piano. I would guess it's not super easy, but I don't think it's as hard as it is when it's attempted as a reduction. Because I remember my pianist for my lecture recital, like, how am I supposed to do like all these different things happening because of like the quotations, there's lots of layering and stuff happening in